Imagine a man lying on a pile of corpses. His face is destroyed, half of his jaw is missing. He has been shot by an exploding bullet designed to tear human flesh apart. The doctors have tagged him as dead. He is left in the snow to freeze along with hundreds of others, but then something impossible happens. A nurse walking past the pile notices a leg twitch. This man refuses to die. He claws his way back from the edge of oblivion. And 7 days later, on the exact day the peace treaty is signed, he wakes up. This is not a scene from a horror movie. This is the end of the story of Simo Häyhä, but the beginning is even more terrifying. In the history of warfare, numbers usually tell the story of armies. But in the winter of 1939, one number tells the story of a single man, 505. That is the official number of confirmed kills credited to Simo Häyhä. But that number hides a terrifying secret. He achieved this in just 98 days. That is an average of 5 kills every single day for 3 months, and he did it in temperatures that dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. But here is the detail that baffles modern military experts. Here is the question that drives ballistics engineers crazy. Simo Häyhä did not use a high-tech sniper rifle. He did not use a telescopic scope. He refused the very technology that was supposed to make him deadly. He hunted the Soviet army using only a simple piece of iron on the end of his barrel. Why? Why would the world's deadliest sniper handicap himself? Was it arrogance? Was it madness? Or did he know a secret about the physics of war that everyone else had missed? Today on the War Chronicles, we do not just tell you a biography, we declassify the science of the iron sight. We analyze the psychology of a man who turned himself into a ghost. And we take you inside the frozen forest of Kala where the snow itself started shooting back. To understand the monster, we must first understand the cage. Challenge number 1: the geography of suicide. It is November 1939. The Soviet Union is a superpower. It has millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and an air force that can blot out the sun. Finland is a tiny nation of farmers and loggers. It has almost no tanks. It has almost no anti-tank guns. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, looks at the map and decides he wants Finland. He expects the war to last 2 weeks. He orders his generals to prepare a victory parade in Helsinki, but Stalin makes a fatal calculation error. He looks at the map, but he ignores the thermometer. He invades in winter, and not just any winter. The winter of 1939 becomes one of the coldest in recorded European history. The Soviet 9th and 14th Armies march into Finland. They bring heavy tanks, they bring heavy artillery, they bring brass bands to play victory music. But as they cross the border, the temperature drops, -10, -20, -30, -40. At -40 degrees Celsius, physics changes. Oil turns into glue, truck engines seize up. If a soldier touches the metal of his rifle with a bare hand, his skin instantly fuses to the steel and rips off. If a man stops walking, his sweat freezes inside his clothes, turning his uniform into a coffin of ice. The Soviet soldiers, mostly conscripts from the warmer southern regions of Ukraine, are not ready. They are wearing thin brown uniforms. Against the blinding white snow of Finland, they stand out like black ink on a white page. They are not soldiers anymore. They are targets. Into this frozen hell steps a man who shouldn't be a hero. Simo Häyhä is 5 feet 3 inches tall. He is mild-mannered. He is a farmer. Before the war, his biggest concern was the health of his cows. But Simo has a talent. He is a hunter. He has lived his entire life in the wilderness. He knows how to track a fox in deep snow without making a sound. He knows how to sit perfectly still for hours waiting for a moose to step into a clearing. He has trophies on his wall from shooting competitions where he could hit a target 150 meters away 16 times in a minute. When the invasion begins, Simo grabs his personal rifle. It is not a military-issue weapon. It is a civil guard variant of the Russian Mosin Nagant known as the M2830. He knows every scratch on the stock. He knows exactly how the trigger breaks. He packs his white camouflage suit. He puts on his skis. And he glides into the forest along the Kala River. The Battle of Kala is legendary. The Finns have a saying, Kala kestia Kala holds. The Soviet army throws tens of thousands of men against a handful of Finnish defenders. They use human wave tactics, sending row after row of soldiers running into machine gun fire. It is a meat grinder. But while the machine gunners are mowing down the masses, Simo Häyhä is playing a different game. He goes alone. He moves into the no-man's land, the deadly strip of frozen ground between the two armies. He finds a position, and he disappears. How does a man hide in a flat field of snow while hundreds of eyes are looking for him? Challenge number 2, the camouflage of heat and sound. Most snipers hide their bodies. Simo hid his biology. Hack number 1, the breath. In freezing air, every time you exhale, a cloud of white steam rises from your mouth. This steam is a beacon. It tells the enemy a human is breathing here. So what did Simo do? He ate snow. Before he took a shot, and while he was waiting, he kept a mouthful of snow in his cheeks. This lowered the temperature of his mouth. It cooled his breath so that when he exhaled there was no steam. He froze his own mouth to remain invisible. Hack number 2, the shockwave. When a high-powered rifle fires, gas explodes out of the barrel. This gas hits the ground. If the ground is covered in loose powdery snow, the blast kicks up a cloud of white dust. This snow puff gives away your position instantly. Before settling in, Simo would pour water on the snow in front of his barrel or pack it down until it was hard ice. When he fired, the ice didn't move. No dust, no sign. Hack number 3, the silhouette. Simo wore layers of wool underneath his white smock. This didn't just keep him warm, it broke up his body's shape. He wrapped his rifle in white medical gauze and tape. He became a lump of snow. Soviet patrols would walk past him within 50 meters and never see him. He was a part of the landscape. Now we reach the core of the legend, the rifle. In 1939, the Finnish army had access to sniper scopes. They offered magnification. They offered the ability to see the enemy's face at 500 yards, but Simo said no. He chose the iron sight, a simple metal post at the end of the barrel and a notch at the back. To the modern observer, this seems crazy. Why give up the advantage of zoom? Simo understood the physics of the winter battlefield better than the engineers did. He knew that a scope was not an advantage. In -40 degrees, it was a death trap. Reason 1, the fog. Have you ever walked from the cold into a warm room with glasses on? They fog up. Now imagine breathing near a glass lens in freezing air. The moisture from your eye and skin condenses on the glass and freezes instantly. You are blind, you have to wipe it. Movement kills. Iron sights never fog. Reason 2, the glint. The sun in the Finnish winter sits low on the horizon. Its rays travel parallel to the ground. If those rays hit the curved glass lens of a scope, they reflect. A tiny flash of light. To a counter sniper watching the tree line, that flash is a target. By removing the glass, Simo removed the reflection. He could aim directly into the sun if he had to. Reason 3, the head height. This is the most critical tactical reason. Look at a rifle with a scope. The scope sits about 2 inches above the barrel. To look through it, you have to raise your head. You have to lift your helmet out of cover. Simo was a small man. With iron sights, he could keep his cheek pressed tight against the stock. He barely had to lift his eyes above the snow level. He presented a target that was almost impossible to hit. He practiced with these sights until they were an extension of his eye. He adjusted them for the extreme cold because metal contracts in the cold, changing the point of impact. He knew that at -40 degrees the air is denser, affecting the bullet's flight path. He calculated all of this in his head without a computer, without a spotter, without a calculator. And so the killing began. By January 1940, the forest around the Kala River had changed. It was no longer just cold. It was haunted. The Soviet soldiers began to notice a pattern. Officers were dying. Communications runners were dying. Tank commanders who popped their heads out of the hatch were dying. And they were all dying in the same way. A single shot, no follow-up, no muzzle flash, no sound until the body hit the ground. The fear that gripped the Red Army was primal. It wasn't the fear of a battle where you can see the enemy and fight back. It was the fear of the unknown. They stopped lighting fires to keep warm because the firelight made them silhouettes. They stopped talking above a whisper. They started shooting at shadows. The political commissars tried to tell the men that the White Death was a myth invented by Finnish propaganda to scare them. But you cannot argue with a body count. By the end of December, Häyhä had killed over 150 men. How accurate was he? There are reports of Häyhä hitting targets at 450 meters with iron sights. To put that in perspective, a football field is roughly 100 meters long. Imagine trying to hit a man-sized target 4.5 football fields away without a scope. At that distance, the front sight post of the rifle is wider than the target itself. You have to aim by instinct. You have to feel the shot. The Soviet commanders were furious. A single man was holding up the advance of an entire division. It was humiliating. They decided to hunt the hunter. They deployed their own elite snipers, men trained in Moscow, men with the best telescopic scopes money could buy. They sent them into the forest with one order: kill the White Death. This led to one of the most tense duels in military history. A Soviet sniper killed 3 Finnish soldiers and waited. He didn't move. He knew that Häyhä would come to investigate. It was a trap. Häyhä arrived. He saw the bodies of his comrades. He knew an enemy was watching, but he didn't panic. He didn't search for the enemy. He became a part of the snow. He lay there for hours. The sun began to move across the sky. The temperature dropped further. Most men would have frozen. Most men would have shivered, giving away their position. But Häyhä had mastered the art of stillness. He waited for the Soviet sniper to make a mistake. As evening approached, the Soviet sniper grew impatient. He thought Häyhä wasn't there. He raised his head slightly to scan the horizon. The setting sun hit the lens of his expensive telescopic scope. A tiny glint, a flash of light, that was all Häyhä needed. Häyhä saw the flash. He raised his rifle. He didn't have a scope to glint. He didn't have to raise his head high. He aligned the iron sights. He accounted for the drop. He accounted for the wind. Crack. A single shot echoed through the trees. 450 meters away, the Soviet sniper dropped dead. The trap had failed because the Soviet relied on technology and Häyhä relied on patience. When snipers failed, the Soviets turned to brute force. They realized they couldn't see him, so they decided to destroy everything. If they suspected Häyhä was in a specific grid square, they wouldn't send men. They would send high-explosive shells. They began using indirect artillery fire to hunt a single man. This is unheard of in warfare. Usually artillery is used for tanks or bunkers. Using it for one person shows the level of fear he inspired. The forest was turned into a moonscape of craters. Trees were shattered into splinters. On one occasion, a mortar shell landed just feet away from Häyhä. The blast wave tore the back of his heavy coat to shreds. It should have killed him. The shrapnel should have torn him apart. But he was lying prone, buried deep in the snow, which absorbed the fragmentation. He stood up, shook off the snow, checked his rifle, and walked away. To the Soviets observing from a distance, this was the final proof. He wasn't human. You could shoot him and he wouldn't die. You could bomb him and he wouldn't die. He was a phantom. The morale of the Soviet troops stationed at Kala collapsed. They began to believe that the forest itself was rejecting them, but Häyhä wasn't just a sniper. This is a part of the story often forgotten. When the Soviets launched massive human wave attacks where thousands of men ran screaming across the ice, Häyhä put down his rifle and picked up a Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. The Suomi is a brutal weapon. It fires 900 rounds per minute. It has a 71-round drum magazine. In close-quarters combat in the dense forest, it is a chainsaw. On days when the Soviets attacked in force, Häyhä would move to the front trench. He would wait until the enemy was within 50 meters, and then he would open fire. The official count of 505 kills refers only to his sniper kills. If you include the men he killed with the submachine gun, the number rises to over 700. Some Finnish sources claim 800. In 98 days, the sheer logistics of killing that many people is staggering. It requires a level of stamina and mental hardness that is difficult to comprehend. He wasn't just killing from a distance, he was seeing the whites of their eyes. Häyhä was promoted from corporal to second lieutenant, a jump in rank never before seen in the Finnish army. He was given awards, he was given gifts. A Swedish businessman donated a custom-built rifle to him. He became a celebrity, but celebrity in a war zone puts a target on your back. The Soviets knew who he was, they knew where he was operating. And they were preparing a final massive assault to crush the Kala front once and for all. It is March 6, 1940. The Winter War has been raging for 100 days. The Red Army is desperate. Stalin is furious. He demands a breakthrough before the spring thaw melts the ice. He orders a massive assault on the Kala front. The Soviets launch a human wave attack that defies logic. Thousands of men run across the frozen swamps screaming into the Finnish machine guns. Simo Häyhä is in the front line. He is tired. He has been fighting without rest for 3 months. His white camouflage suit is stained with gun oil and soot. He is not sniping from a hidden position today. The enemy is too close. He is standing in a trench firing his rifle as fast as he can work the bolt. Suddenly, a Soviet soldier spots him. We do not know who this soldier was. History did not record his name, but he was likely a conscript armed with a standard Mosin Nagant rifle. But he wasn't firing standard ammunition. He was firing a PZ explosive bullet. These bullets were designed to detonate on impact to destroy light vehicles or ignite fuel tanks. They were illegal to use against infantry under the Hague Convention, but on the Eastern Front rules did not apply. The Soviet soldier aims, he fires. The bullet travels across the ice. It hits Simo Häyhä in the lower left jaw. The physics of the impact are horrifying. A standard bullet would punch a hole. An exploding bullet detonates inside the tissue. The blast shattered Simo's jawbone into fragments. It tore away his left cheek. It ripped through the muscle and nerves. Simo fell backward into the snow. He didn't die instantly. He lay there choking on his own blood, the snow around him turning a violent crimson. The battle raged over his body. Finnish soldiers counter-attacked, pushing the Soviets back. When the firing died down, a fellow soldier found Simo. He looked at the wound and turned away in horror. He later reported to his commanding officer half his head is missing. They placed Simo on a rescue sled, a wooden ski stretcher dragged by reindeer or fellow soldiers. He was unconscious. His pulse was weak. They transported him miles through the frozen forest to a field hospital. But when they arrived, the doctors were overwhelmed. There were hundreds of wounded men, men with missing limbs, men with stomach wounds. Triage is a cold calculus. You treat the ones who can be saved. You leave the ones who are dying. The doctors looked at Simo. His face was a ruin. They couldn't find a pulse in his neck because of the swelling. They assumed he was dead or would be dead within minutes. So they placed him in the death pile, a room or a tent where the corpses were stacked before burial. Simo Häyhä, the White Death, was officially dead. For hours he lay among the corpses. His body temperature dropped. His heart beat so slowly it was imperceptible. He was trapped in a coma, drifting in the darkness. But deep inside his brain, the will to survive was still fighting. A nurse walking past the pile of bodies noticed something, a movement, a leg twitched. She stopped. She checked again. She found a faint pulse. She yelled for a doctor. This one is alive. They rushed him into surgery. It was a miracle that he hadn't frozen to death. It was a miracle he hadn't bled out. It was a miracle he hadn't suffocated. Simo remained in a coma for 1 week. While he slept, the war reached its climax. The Finnish army was exhausted. They had run out of ammunition. They had inflicted massive casualties on the Soviets. Over 300,000 Russian soldiers were dead or wounded, but they could not hold out any longer. The Finnish government sued for peace. On March 13, 1940, the Moscow Peace Treaty was signed. The guns fell silent at 11 a.m. And at that exact moment, thousands of miles away in a hospital bed, Simo Häyhä opened his eyes. He woke up to a world at peace. The timing was so poetic that it feels like a myth, but it is a documented fact. The war began when he entered the woods and it ended when he woke up. Survival was only the beginning of his pain. When Simo looked in a mirror for the first time, he did not recognize the man staring back. His jaw was gone. His cheek was a mass of scar tissue. He couldn't eat solid food. He couldn't speak clearly. The Finnish government, realizing his value as a symbol, spared no expense in his treatment. He underwent 26 separate surgeries over several years. Doctors took bone from his hip to rebuild his jaw. They used skin grafts to close the hole in his face. It was a long, agonizing recovery. During his recovery, he received letters from all over Finland. He was a national hero. He was promoted from corporal to second lieutenant, a jump in rank that had never happened before in the history of the Finnish Defense Forces. Marshal Mannerheim, the commander-in-chief, personally pinned the medal on his chest. But Simo didn't want the fame. He wanted his farm. He wanted his dogs. He wanted the silence of the forest. The war had taken his face, but it hadn't taken his soul. He returned to his village of Ruokalahti. But there was a problem. His original farm was in Karelia, the land that Finland had been forced to give to the Soviet Union as part of the peace treaty. The land he had fought to defend was now enemy territory. He was given a new farm by the government. He lived alone. He never married. Perhaps he felt that his disfigurement made him unlovable. Or perhaps he simply preferred the company of animals. He became a dog breeder. He raised Finnish Spitz dogs. He hunted moose. Years later, the president of Finland, Urho Kekkonen, came to hunt moose with Simo. They walked through the woods together. The president asked him, "Simo, is it difficult to live with what you did?" Simo stopped walking. He looked at the trees. He didn't talk about glory. He didn't talk about killing. He talked about duty. He said, "I did what I was told to do as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone else had done the same." It was the answer of a man who had no regrets because he had no hate. He didn't kill Russians because he hated them. He killed them because they were standing on his land. In the decades since the Winter War, military historians and ballistics experts have tried to reverse engineer the success of Simo Häyhä. They have tried to answer a simple question: is it physically possible for one man to kill 505 people in 98 days? Let's look at the math. 505 kills in 98 days is an average of 5.1 kills per day. But Simo didn't fight every day. There were days of blizzards where visibility was zero. There were days he was sick. This means on active days his kill rate was likely much higher, perhaps 10 or 15 men a day. Modern snipers in Afghanistan or Iraq might wait 3 days for a single target. How did Simo find so many? The answer lies in the target-rich environment. The Soviet tactics of 1939 were suicidal. They marched in tight formations. They wore dark uniforms against white snow. They stood up in trenches. Simo wasn't hunting elusive ghosts, he was shooting at a wall of men who had no idea how to hide. There is another piece of the puzzle often ignored. The number 505 refers only to his sniper rifle kills. Finnish military records suggest he killed another 200 men with his Suomi KP-31 submachine gun during close-quarters ambushes. If these numbers are accurate, his total kill count is over 700. This makes him not just the deadliest sniper, but one of the deadliest individual infantrymen in human history. Skeptics argue that kills in war are hard to confirm. In the chaos of battle, who checks the body? Did the enemy die or was he just wounded? The Soviets certainly didn't send death certificates to the Finns. However, Simo's kills were witnessed by his spotters and fellow soldiers. The Finnish army was strict about confirmation. They didn't want to create a fake hero, they needed real results. And the graveyards of the Soviet Ninth Army are proof enough. What does killing 500 men do to a human mind? Most soldiers suffer from PTSD. They have nightmares. They can't function in society. But Simo Häyhä seemed immune. After the war, he returned to farming. He was a popular dog breeder. He was known as a kind neighbor who would help you fix your fence. He never bragged in bars. He never wrote a book to make money. He lived in a small wooden house in Ruokalahti filled with hunting trophies. Psychologists suggest that Simo was able to cope because he compartmentalized the war. To him, shooting a Soviet soldier wasn't murder, it was pest control. He viewed the invading army as a force of nature, like a pack of wolves attacking his herd. He did not hate the individual Russian conscript. He hated the invasion. This emotional detachment allowed him to sleep at night when others would be screaming. In one rare interview, a reporter asked him if he felt guilt. Simo looked confused. He said, "I felt no guilt. I did what I was commanded to do to protect my country." For Simo, duty was an absolute. There was no gray area. There was only the target and the trigger. Simo Häyhä changed the way the world thought about snipers. Before him, snipers were seen as cowardly assassins who hid in the shadows. After him, they were seen as force multipliers. Because of Simo, armies around the world changed their training. They stopped teaching snipers just to shoot, they taught them to survive. They taught them camouflage. They taught them patience. They taught them the value of the cold bore shot, the first shot from a cold rifle, which is the most accurate. Modern sniper rifles are marvels of technology. They have laser rangefinders. They have ballistic computers that calculate wind speed and humidity. They have thermal scopes that can see body heat through walls. A modern sniper can hit a target at 2,000 meters. But despite all this technology, military instructors still teach the story of Simo Häyhä. Why? Because technology can fail, batteries die, lasers break, glass fogs up, but the human eye and the human will not break. Simo proved that the most dangerous component of a sniper system is not the rifle, it is the man behind it. In the winter of 2001, just months before he died, Simo Häyhä received a letter from a Russian historian. The letter asked if Simo would be willing to meet with a Soviet veteran who had fought at Kala. The veteran wanted to shake the hand of the White Death. Simo agreed, but he was too frail to travel. He died on April 1, 2002 at the age of 96. He died in a veteran's nursing home in Hamina. It is said that in his final days he would look out the window at the snow falling on the pine trees and smile. His funeral was attended by generals and politicians. But the most poignant tribute came from the ordinary people of Finland. To them, he wasn't just a soldier. He was the embodiment of sisu, the Finnish spirit of grit. He was the proof that a small nation could stand up to a giant and win. Today, if you visit the Kala battlefield, the trenches are still there, dug into the earth. The trees still bear the scars of shrapnel, and in the silence of the forest, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the crunch of skis on snow. The ghost of the White Death still patrols these woods. He refused a scope. He refused to freeze. He refused to miss. And in doing so, he etched his name into history not with ink but with iron.